All right, we shall call the meeting to order, and today we'll be dealing with the pursuant to the order reference of Monday, June 10th, Bill C-101, an act to amend the Customs Tariff and Canadian International Trade Tribunal Act, and we're dealing with the clause-by-clause sections to that act. With us, if there's any questions from anybody as we go through, we have witnesses from the Department of Finance, Patrick Haley, Director General International Trade Policy, Michelle Gauvier, Senior Director Trade Rules, International Trade and Finance, and from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, John Layton, Executive Director, Trade Remedies, and North American Trade Division. So, we will. Are we ready to roll? Okay. Then go to clause-by-clause consideration. I'm calling clause 1. There's no amendments to clause 1. All those in favor of clause 1. On division? On division. There is a new clause proposed by the CPC, CPC 1. Mr. Polyev.
Yeah, I suspect this one will just be a friendly amendment. The proposal would see that all of the surtaxes collected on steel and aluminum imported from the United States should be used to compensate economic loss incurred by domestic steel producers and other industries as a result of the tariffs imposed by the United States on Canadian steel and aluminum products. So I think the government's has made promises to do this. I'm sure they'll have no problem putting it into law.
Okay. I was just looking. You didn't want to. I guess everyone has the amendment before them, so there's no. Not necessary to read it. I will have to rule it out of order and inadmissible, and I'll give you my reasons why. Bill C-101 amends the customs tariff.
Yeah, that's not friendly.
By suspending subsections 55.5 and 55.6 for 2 years. The amendment seeks to appropriate all amounts collected under certain surtaxes and use them to compensate domestic steel producers for economic losses incurred as a result of tariffs imposed by the United States. As the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition, states on page 770, quote, an amendment to a bill that was referred to committee after second reading is out of order if it is beyond the scope and principle of the bill, end of quote. In the opinion of the chair, CPC 1 is a new concept that is beyond the scope of the bill. In addition, as House of Commons Procedures and Practice, 3rd edition, states on page 772, and I know Tom's not here to order the page stated, but this is the case, quote, since an amendment may not infringe upon the financial initiative of the Crown, it is inadmissible if it imposes a charge on the public treasury or if it extends the objects or purposes or relaxes the conditions and qualifications specified in the Royal Recommendation, end of quote. In the opinion of the chair, the amendment proposes a new scheme which seeks to appropriate funds from the public treasury and alter the terms and conditions of the Royal Recommendation. For both these reasons, therefore, I rule the amendment inadmissible.
Chair, given that there would be unanimous support for this amendment, I would challenge the chair.
You can do that. The chair has been challenged. Clerk, I guess you had to take a vote on if the ruling of the chair is upheld or not. Am I correct, or am I not correct?
If they want to have a recorded vote, or they can just do it by hand, shall the decision of the chair be sustained.
Okay.
Recorded vote.
Recorded vote.
Madame Bendayan, shall the decision of the chair be sustained?
Oui.
Mr. Fragiscatus?
Yes.
Mr. McLeod?
Mr. I'm not clear what the vote is actually on. What is the
Shall
wording?
the decision of the chair be sustained on the amendment of Mr. Poirier?
Chair's decision.
We support Wayne, so.
Yeah, I support, yes. I asked for clarity on the wording. I got it.
Ms. Rudd? Mr. Sabara,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
No.
Mr. Poliev,
No.
Monsieur Dussault,
Yes.
Former chair. Former chair.
carried.
He's a former chair, so what else could he do? He's got to abide by the rules, Pierre. All right. There's also a new clause proposed, 1.1 by the NDP. NDP 1, Mr. Dussault, your floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You will see in the list of amendments, and I hope that you will find it admissible. I have high hopes that you will, because it's directly related to the testimony we heard yesterday from representatives of the Steelworkers Union. They said that they wanted a bigger role in the Foreign Trade Tribunal. They wanted not only the right to participate, but they wanted to participate in hearings and be able to file complaints with the tribunal. And that's what my amendment would do by introducing a new definition of national producer in the Act, so that representatives can act as national or domestic producers, and that would allow them to initiate complaints in the Act that provides for these complaints by domestic producers. Changing the definition would allow them to cover unions and employees so that they can also have a voice in this system of complaints and dispute settlement.
We'll have to rule that amendment as inadmissible as well, because it's beyond the scope of the bill. We did hear what witnesses had to say yesterday, but it is beyond the scope of the bill, and I'll explain why. The amendment seeks to define, quote, a domestic producer in the interpretation clause. As the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition, states on page 773, quote, the interpretation clause of a bill is not the place to propose a substantive amendment to a bill unless other amendments have been adopted that would warrant amendments to the interpretation clause. In addition, an amendment to the interpretation clause of a bill that was referred to a committee after second reading must always relate to the bill and may neither exceed the scope nor be contrary to the principle of the bill, end quote. It's the opinion of the chair that the proposed amendment is a substantive amendment to the interpretation clause. Therefore, I would rule the amendment is inadmissible. Go ahead, Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Chair, you've ruled twice now on two different amendments that it is of the opinion of the chair and the scope of the bill that both amendments are outside of the intent, in the chair's view, the intent of the bill. Could the chair please, for the purpose of myself being new to this committee, explain what the chair's belief, the intent of the bill is?
Well, the chair's belief, if you go back to the House of Commons Procedures and Practice, it explains it pretty clearly. It's beyond the scope of the bill.
But what is the chair's view, the intent of C-101 is?
See, I'm not going to get you into a debate on the ruling. C-101, in terms of the bill, gives the Minister of Finance another tool of which to deal with a surge in steel imports,
Which would
and
then
deal
what?
with it appropriately. But what we're dealing with here is
which would
the
then
bill that makes that possible.
Okay.
And all I can do as chairs is rule on amendments based on what our rules and practices and procedures as outlined
Okay.
in various documents around this place, whether it's admissible or inadmissible.
Right.
In those two cases, it's not. The other three amendments that I believe are on our
Okay.
deck are admissible.
Mr. Chair,
Might be four.
the reason why I ask is you've been here a lot longer than I have, and again, sometimes I think we tend to we walk through those doors and common sense tends to kind of go out the window. But I'm by no way is that referring to your chair. I mean overall, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair. I just want to know, because C-101 in layman's terms would be there to protect our domestic producers. Am I correct in that assumption?
And more than that.
Correct. And more than that. The reason why I offer this is that, so if C-101 is there and being developed and being passed and put forward to protect our domestic producers against, protectionist measures as opposed by those south of the border, as well as anti-dumping from other countries, it would make sense if we reread the original motion that was put forth by the CPC, that is only to remedy any harm or injury, trade injury, to our domestic producers, that any any tariffs that have been or surtaxes that have been collected would then be paid and collected. That it shall be used to compensate the economic loss incurred by domestic steel producers. Mr. Speaker, if you, Mr. Chair, it makes it goes to the direct intent of C-101. It does not. It's not outside of C-101. If your argument is that it doesn't fall within the intent of C-101, then I think that is a faulty argument.
Mr. Doherty, we've already ruled on that. We had a challenge in the chair that was upheld.
But it was of the chair's opinion that it fell outside of the intent.
We can only deal as a committee on legislation with the parameters that the government presents us in terms of a bill.
But would you not agree that if
you were talking about general trade practices within that scope and how we handle them, your argument would be valid. But the scope of this bill does not allow us to go that far. It's beyond the scope of the bill and have a rule that way. So we will move on to Clause 2. And there's no amendments to Clause 2. Shall Clause 2 carry?
Mr. Chair, I just want to
Yep.
comment on
Clause
that.
2 is on the floor. Go ahead.
The bill summary says that this enactment provides for the repeal of subsections 55.5 and 6 of the customs tariffs and the subsequent reenactment 2 years later. It also makes consequential amendments to the Canadian International Trade Tribunal Act. Those acts have as their purpose the application of tariffs and customs and duties. The amendments have dealt with tariffs, customs, and duties, so they're entirely within the bill and serve precisely the purpose that the bill has set out. I appreciate you've been trying to protect your Liberal friends from having to vote on those amendments. They'd rather duck and hide rather than take a stand, and your amendments have helped them to do that. But frankly, the amendments are entirely in order, and they relate directly to the bill at hand.
I've already ruled on the amendment been out of order. It's inadmissible, and that's the end of that
Right.
point. If you have
Point of order.
If you have some questions you want to ask to witnesses on Clause 2, you're welcome to it, or how it interrelates.
A couple of point of order.
A point of order, yeah.
A couple of irregularities in the challenge vote. One of the Liberal members admitted to being confused about what the vote was, and that may have caused some difficulty in properly conducting the challenge vote.
We're not.
Point of
We're
order,
not.
Chair.
We're, go ahead.
Secondly, yeah, and they think it's hilarious, you know, and then having a good laugh about serious matters related to international trade and people's livelihoods. And then, Mr. Chair, I'd like to seek some clarification. If the challenge function happens from the committee, and the chair being challenged is still behind the microphone, conducting the vote, how can that vote be properly carried out in an objective fashion?
That is how it operates in Parliament. The chair did not have a vote in terms of the clerk called the vote on a recorded vote, whether the challenge to the chair would be upheld or not. The challenge of the chair's decision was upheld by a substantive majority with members of different parties supporting the chair. And so that ruling is passed and done. But if you have questions to officials that are here on any of those areas, then you're welcome to it. I do have a second point of order, I think, from Mr. Sabera.
Thank you, Chair. And just wanted to ask again, have you ruled this clause to be out of the scope of the bill?
Yes, the proposed new clause 1.1 by CPC 1 has been ruled inadmissible. The proposed new clause 1.1 on the amendment NDP 1 has been ruled inadmissible, and we are on clause 2. We didn't vote on that yet, did we? Yes, we did.
But, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
On the challenge vote, just seek some clarification. If a member, while in the conduct of voting, concedes that he or she is not sure what he or she is voting on, then it calls into question whether the challenge vote was actually legitimate. It's possible that there were more than one member of the government side that were confused about what they were voting for or voting against. And in fairness, and part of that is that there is a...
He's going to slip through his point of order. It's not a point of order, but we'll allow him to discuss it a little bit, and we'll go to yours, Mr. McLeod.
Is that a lot of people... See, when you vote on a challenge, you vote yes if you want to uphold the chair, and no if you want to challenge the chair. And a lot of people who think, a lot of people might assume that when they're voting yes, that they're actually voting yes in favor of the amendment.
That's right.
Right? And then, in fact, what the essence of the vote, the effect of the vote, is precisely the opposite of the intention in case of such confusion. Furthermore, the yes that someone might conduct during a challenge function, you think about that, think about yes, they might be thinking, yes, I agree that we should challenge the chair. And when members admit that they're confused about that, there should be no shame in that. It's possible for that to happen. But what I noticed then is that the parliamentary secretary started to issue instructions, voting instructions verbally. And the parliamentary secretary is a quasi-member of the executive branch of government, something for which I congratulate her. It's an honor to serve as a parliamentary secretary.
Great job.
But it is not appropriate for the executive branch to be at this table,
Mr.
dictating
you were off.
to people
you were
how
into,
they
you were
should
into
vote.
debate.
What's that?
There.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We agree with we agree with the presence of the parliamentary secretary. I think that she has added a great deal to the conversation on many days, but it is wrong for parliamentary secretaries to issue instructions to members of the committee, and that's where the line is crossed.
All right.
And I want you to make sure that members of the governing delegation who are here today feel comfortable expressing their own will, both that they know what they're voting on and that they don't feel any sort of intimidation or pressure in doing so.
All right. Could we now go to Mr. McLeod, who I think was questioning.
Thank you,
was
Mr.
wondering,
Chair. I just
shall
wanted to
chair's
reassure the
decision
member
be
that
upheld?
I just wanted to, I appreciate his concern, but I want to reassure the member that it was clear to me what I was voting on, so he doesn't have to worry about it.
Okay. Then on clause 2, shall clause 2 carry? All those
division.
in favor? On division. There's a proposal for a new clause 2.1, and I remind members once again that if there is questions to officials, they are here for that purpose. You're welcome to ask them. Mr. Dussault. Andy.
NDP 2.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You will see the amendment here seeks to respond to a situation that is highly problematic, in my opinion, especially for the industry, because only 2 of the 7 products that have safeguard measures following an analysis by the tribunal and its decision and a decree by the Minister of Finance to protect 2 categories of products. So the amendment I'm proposing is pretty clear if you read it. It's to ensure that the 5 other products, we're talking here about concrete reinforcing bars, energy tubular products, hot rolled sheets, pre-painted steel or wire rods, if they don't have any safeguard measures within 4 months of the day on which the section comes into force, the Minister of Finance must cause a report to be tabled before each House of Parliament on any of the first 15 days on which that House is sitting after the expiry of that 4-month period. And the report must include the reasons why no order has been made to protect those 5 categories of products. It's worrisome for the industry to know that 5 categories of products are still subject to some disturbances and have no safeguard measures compared to the other 2. And this is to add greater transparency, given the fact that the minister, and we didn't get any assurance from the witnesses either when they were before us, that these 5 other products would be protected afterwards. So we want a report 4 months after the adoption of this clause to explain why, if there has been no protection, why that is, and provide some more transparency in the system, because the industry expects the government to stand up for it because of the 5 categories I've just listed have no protection, contrary to the other 2 that do have protection.
Any, Ms. Rudd?
I think a point of clarification. When my colleague talks about no industry participation, if he remembers yesterday, the panel was talking, or the witnesses were talking about the panel that has been struck, of which they are very engaged. And part of that conversation was about what mechanisms will be looked at going forward, because we recognize this is a new world we're in, and we need to make sure that we're always nimble and ready for what the next situation brings. I guess the other point was really about understanding the scope of what those safeguards could be, should be, was one of the roles of this panel. So in a more formal way, my comments would be that the custom tariffs require that certain evidentiary standards, and we heard that from the panel, must be met in order for the Minister of Finance to recommend the imposition of provisional safeguards. So goods that are imported in such conditions that cause or threaten to cause serious injury to domestic industry and the existence of critical circumstances. And we heard that from the panel yesterday as well as the previous panel. of officials talking about making sure that the surges are well investigated to make sure they understand where those surges are coming from and why they're coming in that manner, as well as a variety of considerations could affect the government's approach to safeguard actions, including information gathering from domestic producers and stakeholders going back to the panel and the broader sector generally. So for those reasons, I believe, Chair, this bill this amendment should be defeated.
Any further discussion? Any other comments? We ready for the question on NDP 2? All those in favor of amendment NDP 2? Opposed? Lost. Next, still dealing with the same section, a new clause 2.1, proposed NDP 3, Mr. Dussault.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ici, il s'agit de, encore une fois, de
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another clause about transparency. Here it's the impact on employment in Canada, of the use of steel from foreign producers in construction, maintenance and repair, public works, federal real property, and federal immovables. So it's a long-standing demand by the NDP to have greater transparency in public contracts when it comes to the use of steel and aluminum, or rather steel in this case. We should be using Canadian steel, and there should be explanations about the provenance of materials used in public works, construction, repairs, maintenance, and that would allow us to see whether the federal government is doing its share to help our industries. First of all, by buying local products such as steel, which is very important in many parts of the country. So we're asking the minister to table the report for both houses of Parliament within 6 months after the day on which this section comes into force, to show how he assesses the impact of his own procurement, his own public contracts for unemployment in the steel industry of Canada.
Is in order, Ms. Bendayan.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'aimerais aussi remercier mon...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd also like to thank my colleague from the NDP for having proposed this amendment. However, I am of the opinion that this amendment should be turned down. I think there are other more appropriate ways in ensuring transparency on this issue. For example, a study undertaken by a parliamentary committee. We saw it for the House, Standing House Committee on International Finance, International Trade, rather, under Section 232. I think that study worked out really well. So I think there are other ways of ensuring transparency that are available to us. So I propose that this amendment be rejected.
And Dan, anybody, any others want to speak on this bill? Then we'll call the question. All those in favor of NDP 3, shall the amendment carry? Opposed? Lost. So, still dealing with new clause 2.1, an amendment proposed by the NDP, NDP 4, Mr. Dussault.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope the fourth one will be the good one. We want to give the Minister of Finance a tool in order for them to make a report once again before the Houses of Parliament within 6 months after the day on which the section comes into force. So a report containing an assessment of the sufficiency of the resources allocated to the Canada Border Services Agency for the administration and informants of the program legislation as defined in Section 2 of the Canada Border Services Agency Act with respect to steel. So the idea here is to add more transparency regarding the capacity of the Canada Border Services Agency to intercept, if you will, products that are undercosted. As we heard from witnesses yesterday, the Canada Border Services Agency has a tremendous role to play in ensuring the integrity of our borders and also to prevent Canada from being submerged under a wave of cheap steel. There are certain experts in the field who've criticized the work done by the Border Services Agency. Perhaps they've been too lax, or it could just simply be a lack of resources. Whatever the case, I think we should ask the Minister of Finance, as Committee for Finance, to make a report 6 months after the day on which the section comes into force, in order to make sure that the resources allocated to the agency are sufficient in order for it to fulfill its mandate, protect the borders rather, but also protect the industry that's under pressure from external forces, which makes it that cheap steel goes through our borders.
So, is there any further discussion, Mr. McLeod?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, NDP4 refers to sufficient amount of resources allocated to Canada Border Services Agency, and I think we all agree that the CBSA has a tremendous role to play. But I'd like to point out that in 2018, April 2018, the government announced over $30 million over 5 years and $6.8 million per year on an ongoing basis to strengthen trade enforcement. And most of this money will be going to the CBSA to beef up their enforcement and investigative capacity. This translates to 40 new jobs and 50% increase in the number of employees fully dedicated to trade remedy investigations and compliance. So I think the government has made the investment and will continue to review the appropriate allocation of resources.
Mr. Dussault?
Je remercie mon collègue pour son explication.
I'd like to thank my colleague for his explanation. Perhaps I can thank him for those first steps in reinforcing our border and the agency's capacities. But there's nothing here that indicates that you couldn't support this motion. This motion says that 6 months following the adoption of, or the day after which this section comes into force, the Minister of Finance submits a report in order to rightly show the House of Commons that the work that it's been doing has had the right effect. I don't find that explanation to be a convincing argument against my amendment.
Discussion? All those in favor of the amendment NDP 4, all in favor? Opposed? Lost. Then we'll turn to those were all amendments on clause 2.1 for a new clause. Shall clause 3 carry? On division, shall the title carry? Carried. Shall the bill carry? Carried. Shall the chair report the bill to the House? And we don't need to reprint the bill because there's been no amendments. Okay, with that, thank you, and thank you, witnesses, for coming. We have a wee bit of business to deal with related to this bill. Do members have a copy of the project budget? Thank you very much, Mr. Haley, Mr. Layton, Ms. Govier. All right. The what this is the request for the project budget for us actually to deal with C101, the bill that we just dealt with. This is for we're always ahead of the game here, Todd. This is for the witnesses' expense. And the request is for an amount of $4,500 to study Bill C-101, an act to amend the Customs Tariff and Canadian International Trade Tribunal Act. Does somebody want to? Are we moved by Mr. Severo? Go ahead, Mr. Dussault.
Oui, je me demandais
I was wondering if the expense for working meals of $500 was standard. If it was yesterday's meal, I'm led to wonder a little bit on the quality of the meal itself, because we're 10 MPs around this table. It's that's $50 per MP. I think it's a little expensive.
It's standard practice to put $500 in for working meals. They vary. The price, I believe you said, was about 300.
And sometimes less.
300 and a little bit
275
less,
most of the
depending
time.
on the meal. So that's the answer. Any further questions? Then all those in favor of the allocation of $4,500 for this study, we don't have to spend it all. All those in favor? Carried. Then that concludes the business for today. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.